I'd now like to ask Debbie Wiseman to come and share her recent work around sharing the harvest, moose meat, food banks, and policy in Newfoundland and Labrador. And Debbie, I'm just going to call up your slides.
Thank you.
Hope that the screen gods are kind to me. And we will go from there. So.
Okay. Hi, folks. Thanks so much for allowing me to be a part of this amazing event. And I also loved all that energy, Ivan. Today, I'm going to talk to you about how Barry Fordham and I got the provincial government to change decades-old legislation to allow the donation of moose and caribou meat to food banks. First, I want to tell you about the group that I'm a part of, the Social Justice Co-op. They believe that by working together, we can bring about social, political, and economic transformations necessary to avert climate catastrophe, while also creating better jobs, economic equality, healthy communities, genuine respect for Indigenous rights, food security, and a renewed hope in our collective future. So I went to my first co-op meeting just about 2 years ago, but really got involved when COVID came into our lives and meetings went to Zoom. Before that, I don't think I'd even ever heard of Zoom before, but I think I'm an expert at it now. Within the co-op, volunteers are free to work on projects and attend meetings on things they're passionate about. My advice to anyone who wants to advocate for anything is to surround yourself with positive, passionate people, like those people at the co-op. I truly believe I wouldn't be the advocate I am today without them. And personally, I am passionate about making life better for people who live in poverty. One of our teams within the co-op is the food sovereignty team. We believe people have the right to healthy local food. While at a meeting, we got to talking about food banks and the lack of fresh food and the lack of locally sourced food in those food banks. I wondered about local foods like moose and caribou. Were hunters allowed to donate to food banks? I remembered seeing someone in the news talk about it and it not being allowed here and that they were trying to change it. I was going to look into it and get back to the team. And the first slide there is the article that I found that I knew I had seen, and that's Barry Fordham there in the picture, and he's the man leading the charge. So I messaged Barry to ask if this change was in the works. I couldn't find any recent articles saying it was, and this one was from 2018. I thought surely it had to be in the works, but I know government works slowly, so I assumed it was in the works, but it wasn't. I soon found out. Barry got back to me and told me that not only was it not in the works, he hadn't even been able to meet with the minister in charge of initiating the change. And honestly, I was baffled. I couldn't understand why Minister Byrne would not at least meet with Barry and his group to hear them out. I told him that his idea was a really good one, and that our group could help if he wanted, and he graciously accepted. At our next meeting, I spoke to the group about it, and they gave me some ideas of how we could arrange to get a meeting. And for the sake of the timeline, this was July 2020. The first thing I did was write a petition. Barry and the team helped me, thank you. Barry and the team helped me to make sure I had all the points I needed in it. We launched it and shared it around social media, and the response was overwhelming. As you can see, we got over 1,000 signatures within a week. So I'm just going to read a bit of what we had in the petition so you can get an idea of what we were asking for. As we have seen during Snowmageddon and the COVID-19 crisis, food insecurity is a huge problem in Newfoundland and Labrador. Demand for hampers at food banks in our province is growing annually. In our province, 13.4% of households are food insecure, meaning they have inadequate access to food due to financial restraints. 26,000 of us use food banks, with 2 out of 5 of those people being children. The demand for food often outweighs the supply. So what can we do? One way we can combat this is to allow hunters to donate to food banks directly, to allow those food banks to share the harvest with their clients. Presently, there is an outdated legislation in the Wildlife Act, which prevents this from happening. Government has suggested convoluted workarounds, which further stigmatize food bank clients and have privacy concerns. I'll just add here that one of the things suggested was having the hunter give the meat directly to food bank clients. So the way that this suggestion would work is that The hunter would have to have a list of food bank clients and their addresses and drop the meat off themselves, or they'd have to sit in the food bank all day and hand a package of meat to every person that came in. So obviously there's privacy concerns with that. Going on, healthy food should be able to be gifted to the needy without question and without conditions. The solution is to implement a program like Hunters Helping the Hungry in Newfoundland and Labrador. The idea is simple. A hunter would take a moose to be butchered at a government certified butcher to ensure that the meat has been handled properly and to safeguard food security. The meat would then be donated to local food banks. Barry Fordham has been championing this cause for years. Barry is the head of the Outdoor Heritage Coalition, NOHC. NOHC has over 3,000 members and continues to grow. Their mandate is to discuss issues regarding resource use in the province, with particular emphasis on our wild resource of game and fish. And they also address significant issues with the appropriate government agencies with the purpose of effecting change on behalf of outdoor enthusiasts. Hunting has always been a traditional means of improving local food security in this province. Hunters routinely share their harvest with family, friends, neighbors, and community members. Our Indigenous people know how important it is to share the harvest, but giving to local food banks remained illegal. And so what we proposed was that the government to add one little paragraph to the legislation, which said, in the case whereby a hunter wishes to donate moose or caribou meat to a food bank, he or she may do so, provided the meat was cut by a certified butcher and the animal was harvested that same year. And so we released that petition at the end of July. Barry and I were immediately contacted by the media. I think the first person we spoke to was Bernice Hillier at CBC. And just so you know, this was my first time speaking on the radio like that. And I am not somebody who was used to that kind of thing, and I'm still not used to that kind of thing. But it was really important to me that I speak out on this issue. And I just wanted to say to anyone listening, if I can do it, you can do it. So like I said, the petition quickly gained 1,000 signatures. All these media requests started rolling in. We still didn't get to talk to Minister Byrne, though. Our emails went unanswered. He wouldn't speak to us directly. He would only talk to the media on his own, which I will admit was very frustrating. He would bring up reasons for not allowing hunters to donate that we had already thought of and had provisions in place for those things right on our petition. So he had to have seen them. The public reaction to this was 99.9% positive. People could not understand why we had to fight for it for so hard and so long. They couldn't understand why the minister would not meet with us either. And I still don't understand why he wouldn't meet with us. The only negative things we heard were from people who didn't understand the process of hunting and preparing a moose. And once that was explained, they were fine with it. In the following weeks, Barry and I realized that we were not going to get anywhere with Minister Byrne. He was not going to meet with us. So we planned how we could get around him. We had members of the House of Assembly who were willing to bring this forward. In the House of Assembly, it's preferred that the minister who is in charge bring a change forward to legislation, but there was a way to get around that, and we were prepared to take the fight in that direction. We were prepared to do whatever we had to do. We had everything in order to do that. Then the Liberal leadership election happened, and Andrew Furey was our new premier. Premier Furey installed an almost completely new cabinet, and Jerry Byrne was out as the minister in charge. And Elvis Loveless was in. Barry immediately fired off an email to Elvis Loveless's office. And I mean, he probably was in office 5 minutes when Barry sent this email and asked for a meeting. Having dealt with so many roadblocks up to this point, Barry has actually been advocating for this for over 10 years. We were shocked when Minister Loveless's office called us to arrange a meeting with us. Very happy, but shocked. We received some advice prior to the meeting that we should propose a pilot program to the minister, that we would handle any donations. Hunters could bring the donations to us and we would distribute them, and that we would just deal with food banks in St. John's this year and expand province-wide next year. We wanted to make it as simple as possible for the government and the least amount of work as possible for them. Next slide, please. So Barry and I, along with Lucas Roberts, we started a nonprofit called Sharing the Harvest to facilitate all of this. And this is a fun part of the story for sure. Barry and I were so worried about this meeting. This was our chance, right? Maybe our only chance to talk to the government about this. we prepped for the meeting. We like ran through scenarios of arguments and things like that. And when we finally got to speak to the department, they were just all for it. We didn't have to fight. We didn't have to argue. They just agreed with us that it was a great idea and just wanted to know how we could move forward. We were dumbfounded. We talked to each other after the meeting and we still couldn't believe it. I think we even sent up follow-up emails to confirm that, like, yes, it was approved and we were going to do it. But I won't say it was easy. Like I said, it was years of work for Barry. But Minister Lovelace was so open to the idea. That's all you need is somebody who's open to ideas. And we are eternally grateful for that. And we're also really grateful to his staff who worked really hard to get all this in place. So a couple of weeks later, we were preparing to accept donations. We coordinated with the minister's office and realized that they actually had a bigger scope in mind than we did. They were going to open this up to hunters all over the province, and we didn't have to facilitate all the donations. Hunters were free to donate directly to food banks all over the province. So we ended up getting what we wanted and even more. This was mid-November. Next slide, please. This is a little news story about it. The time period for the 2020 program was short. We didn't have a lot of time left in the hunting season then, about 6 weeks, and most hunters had already gotten their moose for the year. We still ended up getting hundreds of pounds of donations. What we did was accept the donations, put our sticker on it, they're like in the picture, label it with a code so we knew which hunter it came from because we had to keep track of that, freeze it, and then when it was frozen, we donated it to the food banks who wanted it. And so I wanted to show a couple more images just to end my presentation, these two here. So I want to include this image of a freezer full of meat. The freezer was donated to us by Leon's on Elizabeth Avenue, and it sits in my living room right now, right next to me. Ready to accept donations again this fall. I also wanted to emphasize that we are a 3-person show right now. While we have lots of help, we don't have an office, we don't have a staff, we don't have anything like that, and we were still able to do this, make this monumental change. And in the other picture, that's Elaine Balsam from Single Parents Association, accepting our very first donation. We distributed donations to Single Parents Association, First Light, and Bridges to Hope this past year. And we've gotten really good feedbacks from the food banks and even from people who received the donations through the food banks. And we can't wait to help facilitate even more donations this coming season. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie.